Okay, here we go. So, today, as often happens, interestingly, today is our Shir on Parshas Terumah, and it's also Rosh Chodesh Adar. So, 2 weeks till Purim. So, of course, we are going to speak about it. Just always works out like this. The link between Purim, Parshas Terumah, right? What were the Mishkan? Of course, what we always do is like the big picture, the end of days. Today's learning, by the way, is for Shmuel Simcha, for Shmuel Simcha ben Freda, and for of course for Shlema, for him, and for all the other cholim, and we really, our learning should help us. Our learning should help us not understand, but accept the fact of how little we understand about sometimes how bitter things are in a personal journey, or in the journey of Am Yisrael, or in the journey of humanity in general. And whenever we contemplate and think about the tzaros we face, it always has to be with an eye on how to make it better, how to fix it. We're not fatalists. We just accept how things are, and that's the way it is, and there's nothing we can do about it. So, I don't know, I'm just thinking about the shooting in Florida and the fact that something it's just crazy. With the lack of gun control, it's just crazy. Anyway, things have to be, things that aren't working. Remember we talk about Ra, if they're not working, that means that they're not working and we have to do something better. In any case, here we go. Our notes are coming. Okay? Today's shiur is drawing on a few different ideas from different profound thinkers. We will work with ideas from Rav Hirsch on the symbolism, the Kabbalistic understandings of the Kalim in the Beis HaMikdash. In the Chumash of Rav Hirsch, right here, he has pages and pages and pages about the deeper meanings and the esoteric, the more abstract ideas that are learned from the practical, physical contours of and the structure of the Kalim in the Beis HaMikdash. Okay? We will also draw on, of course, ideas from Rav Moshe Shapiro, Zechrono Livracha. Can't go too far, can't really venture out in the world of Machshava without immediately having to, draw on the ideas of Moshe Shapiro. And today's shir also draws upon the ideas of one of the Talmidim of Moshe Shapiro, who shared with me a manuscript of a book that he's about to print, and I read it on my plane ride out to Denver this week. And it is Rabbi Jeremy Kagan. And he wrote another book, by the way. It's hardcore reading, great book, summer reading, Pesach vacation reading, because we have so much free time on Pesach. It's called The Choice to Be. Also, incredible book. Probably, in terms of machshav and putting it all together, one of the best books I've ever read. And I have some in my car, actually, come to think of it. One last thing before we start. Whoever wants to get the handouts for this shir, we do this every week, but it seems to work every week because Tanya reports that people join the email list. So if you want to get all the handouts and know when we're having the shir and when we're not, I'm talking to everyone out there, Tanya, Tania, Hammer, HAMMER @gmail. Email her and tell her you want to be on the list. Now, do we have notes?
She's in the process of doing it.
Cutting in half.
Ay, this is not good. Okay, so we're going to start without the notes.
She didn't send anything?
She did. Check your phone.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, so here we go. We are talking about the idea of the Beis HaMikdash, and we're talking about the idea of Purim, and we're putting it together. We're starting with analyzing the idea of Nekama. Nekama, we've talked about this before. Nekama, in English, means revenge. And how do we think about revenge in our terms? How would you describe revenge?
Tit for tat.
Tit for tat. You disobeyed me. You opposed me. You did something against my will. Watch what I'm going to do back to you. Double. 10 times worse. Obviously, this implies a relationship that is competitive, oppositional, power struggles, right? This is not a relationship with Hashem, as we here know very well, correct? So what is Nekama? In order to understand what Nekama is, we have to find its source in Torah. For those of you who have your notes on your phone, we quoted 2 psukim. What's the first pasuk? Which is from Hodu. We say it all the time in Hodu. Kel Nekamos Hashem. What are the next words? Kel Nekamos Hofia. Next words. Heshiv Gamul Al Geim. What does this mean? Kel Nekamos Hashem. First of all, the word Nekama is sandwiched between 2 names of Hashem. Both of those names are representing, or they refer to, what we call the Midas Harachamim. Kel is not short for Elokim. It's a name in and of itself, as in the 13 Midas Harachamim, Hashem, Hashem, Kel. It's Rachamim. Of course, on the other side of Kel Nekamos Hashem, that's Yud Kei Vav Kei, that's the all-inclusive name of Rachamim, of Chesed. Okay? Chesed, we know here, means what? Thank you, Tamara. Yay, Tamara. Every week does this for us. Thank you. Whoever doesn't have it on their phones can have one. I'll take one, please. Okay. The other side of the name of the word Nekama is Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is Chesed. What do we know from learning this over and over again? Chesed means, it does not mean one kindness one person does for another person. What does it mean? Inclusivity, that we're all included. There's nothing but Hashem, and we're all included in Hashem's existence. So, Kel Nekamas Hashem. Nekama is included also in Hashem, and Nekama is sandwiched by 2 names of Rachamim. Kel Nekama Sophia. Hashem will appear as the God of Nekama. Hofia means it will become obvious. We will all get to experience it and understand it. Hashem will appear, will emerge as the God of Nekama. And what is Nekama? Heshiv Gamol Al Geim. Hashem returns the what? Heshiv Gamul Al Geim. Hashem returns everything they've done upon the heads of those arrogant ones. Now, this clearly makes us think about who in the Purim story? Of course. When we talk about Nekama, don't think about the English word, the English so-called translation of it. Nekama in terms of Hashem, a true Nekama, which is only in Hashem's hands to execute, is something more like divine irony. Okay? Divine irony. And that will be seen at the end of days, because Purim is and we're going to see in a minute where the holiday Purim comes in historically through our journey of discovery, which goes through history. We will see that Purim is a glimpse at the light at the end of history. Okay? Purim is showing us how things are going to be. And in the whole entire Purim story is divine irony. How ironic is it that Shaul HaMelech, who did not kill out Agag, when Shmuel told him to take Nekama on Amalek, and we'll talk about what Amalek is, Shaul didn't kill Agag. So Agag survived and had children and grandchildren. And his great-great-grandchild, Haman, had a really good idea to get rid of Vashti so the great-granddaughter of Shaul can take her place and finish the job. How ironic is that? What else is irony in the Purim story? Give me examples. The gallows. How ironic. What else is irony in the Purim story? The horse. Haman's entire maneuvering in the Purim story really was at its core, and we'll understand this because he's Amalek, because he's Esav. It's self-promotion and getting rid of everyone else who's a threat, which in his case meant the entire Jewish people. We always talk about that. Everybody's being a threat. To that extent, to promote himself, to ultimately hoard, to take and grab all the power. That was his main goal. He amassed huge wealth for himself. Where did all that wealth end up? Esther and Mordechai. How ironic is it that every single thing he did to destroy, to sabotage, all for the sake of his own pleasure and power, only serve to empower, enrich, and reconnect Am Yisrael to Hashem. Correct? We know this. We've talked about this. Nekama is divine irony, which means that Hashem is revealed so clearly through Nekama. Kel Nekamos Hashem, Kel Nekamos Hofia. Heishiv Gomol al Gehem. He returns it right back on your head. Haman's Gehenim is saying, I empowered the Jews. I reconnected them to the Torah. We've said this many times. Rav Shapiro says this. Who was more effective in getting the Jews to commit, no matter what, under all circumstances, to their bris with Hashem? Who was more effective, Moshe or Haman? The answer is clearly Haman. Okay? Now, we're going to talk about what a bris means also, and why we say koresh bris, cutting a bris. But the first idea we're starting with here is Nekama is this idea that because Hashem, in the end, is the only real echad, the only thing that exists. Remember last week, this is very important, to go back to last week and review the two systems that Ramchal explains, Hanhagas HaMishpat, Hanhagas HaYichud, right? Hanhagas HaYichud means everything is part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and in the end, it'll be so clear that there is nothing you can do to sabotage, get in the way, undermine, or take it off track. Nothing. Hashem will just use all your efforts to further His purposes. Correct? So you see also that, and now we're going to our Parsha, Parshas Terumah, which is about the Mishkan, and about some of the Kelim, the Aron, the Menorah, and the Shulchan, not the Mizbeach HaZahav this week. The idea of the Mikdash is also presented as sandwiched between two names of Hashem. From the Shira Al Hayam that we say every day. Machon l'shiftecha pa'alta. You made a place for you to dwell in. Hashem, Mikdash, Hashem, konenu yadecha. Look at that. Machon l'shiftecha pa'alta Hashem is how we say it. Mikdash Hashem konenu yadecha. Mikdash Adon. But you see the word Mikdash is again sandwiched between two names of Hashem. You see that? So Hashem is, Moshe says this, Hashem is revealed equally through Nekama as Hashem is revealed through the Mikdash. And we are going to see how that works in a most profound way that really this Rabbi Jeremy Kagan explores in this new book that is upcoming. So, this adds another layer to something we've always been speaking about. You know how we always talk about how Jewish history and a person's own journey unfolds in different stages? We've talked about this a lot. We're going to add a whole nother level to that now. We always said that the first and most primary stage, which is in the subconscious, which is before we're even born, okay, which is comparable to Yetzias Mitzrayim and Matan Torah, is the gestational phase, okay? And that is the phase where we are the fetus is part of the mother. And we explain many times that because we start our lives belonging to someone else, part of someone else, our psyche is already, it's already, essential. It's synonymous with I. There is no sense of self without a sense of belonging to something that is my source of my life. That experience that we all have is a mashal to teach us that is our relationship to Hashem. We belong and are part of Hashem's existence. Now, that is why we've talked about the idea, and it's so predominant today. This is it today. And we'll talk about why this is, how it got to this point, that today everybody is focused on belonging. The big issue is rejection, alienation, FOMO, fear of missing out. Do I or do I not belong? We mentioned that in England they opened a new office in the government just on loneliness, the Commission on Loneliness. People who are taking their lives more and more, unfortunately, in greater numbers, due to feeling that they don't belong. We don't mean fitting in and being like everybody else, but still belonging. This is the greatest pain a person can endure because we are, by our essence, belonging creatures. And the greatest chesed we can do to someone is make them feel that they belong, that they're heard, that they're seen, that we care about them, they belong to us. Now, that's all pre-conscious. That's what we experienced in the Yam Suf and Har Sinai. But then we start to live. First stage is childhood, right? We always talk about this. Now, look here. So many things come into play. What we're exploring now is the journey of Hashem's Dibur through history. How Hashem speaks. Via which methods does Hashem speak? Through history. Now we know the word Dibur is a very interesting word because it's also used, Dibur, Daled Beis Reish, for davar, a thing. We're going to get to understand that. Dibur is how Hashem speaks. In the first phase, childhood, the early phase of our existence, our big challenge in our childhood, the golden calf, all through this time of the Shoftim and the Malachim, till the whole first phase when we had Nisim and Nevuah. What was the big challenge to us spiritually? Avodah Zarah. Okay. The first phase is childhood. Childhood means the child is part of the parent's existence. They don't really have a separate self. That's for sure the case in infancy, but even toddlerhood and childhood, everything they exist off their parents. They're part of the household. The parents buy the food and the clothing, etc., etc. When a child walks out the door in the morning with a knapsack and the homework done in a nice outfit with a lunchbox, the parents had to do a whole bunch of stuff for that to happen. And the child has a bed and heat and a doctor's care. They're entirely part of their parents' existence, but their relationship to their parents is still a very immature one. Basically, when they say I, they can't exist without their parents. They're intuitively part of their parents, but they only relate to their parents essentially as a delivery system. How to get the stuff I need. And to that end, they are obedient, or they're good, or they're whatever, and they appreciate it, but it's very utilitarian. It's very utilitarian. Their relation with their parents is not as a separate self partner, it's as a dependent extension of the parents who turns to the parents to make sure they get what they need. You could see that this is Avodah Zarah. That's exactly what Avodah Zarah is. These are the forces, I'm dependent on them, how do I get what I need? Hashem spoke in that Kufa through Dibur, through Nisim, and through Nevuah. We talk about this all the time, through Nisim and Nevuah. But essentially, you know what Nisim and Nevuah are? Just like a parent? God speaking on behalf of himself. He's the originator of the speech. He's the one who speaks. This is Isarusa de Le'ela. This is awakening from above. Hashem wakes us up by saying, hey, I'm God. This is my world. This is what I can do. These are my rules. Hashem is speaking for himself. We understand that. By the way, I'm not even going into this, but this is the phase symbolized in this creation story of Ish and Ish are one. Our identity is wrapped up in Hashem's identity, even in paganism. God was everywhere. God is in the rock and the stone and the river and the leaf, everywhere. This was not a lack of connection to God. This was an overwhelming sense of being subsumed within God, but just using that for what we could get. This is a state of dependency, and we are physical and self-centered. We have things we need, and our parents are there to supply them. Hashem is there to supply them. This leads to Galus Bavel, and then Paras, which is where the Purim story happens. That is the East, okay? The East, these were cultures steeped in Avodah Zarah, and the juxtaposition, the distortion, the pro and con is like this. In this phase, we are meant to go through this phase. It's the phase of chinuch. It's the phase of knowing ourselves intuitively to be part of God. It's the phase where we're supposed to, it is inevitable that we're going to break away from that phase. But to get that deeply integrated into ourselves for the duration of our history, it should always be there. But not to become so superficial about that relationship that we don't go beyond this state of delivery system, making deals. So Nevuah is Hashem telling us what he wants, but it's hard for us to understand it and listen. And Avodah Zarah is the other side of it. Okay? Now, this stage has got to come to an end, just like childhood. Because that's really not why Hashem created us. To be dependent little puppets. That's really not why Hashem created us. Hashem created us for, and by the way, this is all the Leah phase. We're not even going to go there, but you know what I'm talking about. This is Leah. Now we have to go into the next phase, which is adulthood. Maturing, emerging adulthood. What happens here, and the Purim story comes right here, between phase 1 and phase 2. Okay? But first we have to understand phase 2. phase 2 is emerging adulthood. So here's what happens. If you ask a child, where is yourself located? Where do you locate yourself? It would be within my parents. I exist located within my parents' life. Or we, in this first group, we are located within a greater existence of God. Second phase is moving outside of that. We exist as separate. And now we start not intuitively knowing our connection to God, but now we go to a whole nother method of discovery of who we are, or it's a whole process, which is we use now not intuition and gut awareness, but what Hashem has invested in us, the godly part of us, chachma, the capacity to reason, to logic, to extrapolate, the whole arena of abstract thinking. Okay? And here we enter into phase 2, and we're going to go back to Purim in the middle. Phase 2 is a shift from Torah Shebachsav to Torah Shebal Peh. Okay? The parallel is the Greek, remember we talked about this on Hanukkah? Dismissal of all mythology, essentially. They paid tribute to it, but they didn't take it seriously anymore. All these silly explanations of why things are the way we are, like this interplay of God and man, they gave lip service to it, but it was really the age of man as the center, man discovering our world, man understanding the universal truths, mathematics and physics, philosophy, which means love of knowledge, a understanding of man as a thinking person, a contemplating person, discovering truths through Chachma, Torah Shebal Peh, Greece. This is a natural emergence of a discovery of who we are in the context of our universe, and what is required of us, and how shall we live, and what sort of creature am I, and how shall I behave. And it comes from using our God-given gifts to discover that from the outside world. What's not supposed to happen here, and this is the Hanukkah story, is what's not supposed to happen is, and you're going to talk about Hanukkah, which Kaylee in the Beis HaMikdash does that relate to? The menorah, we'll see. The idea is, yes, you're supposed to use your chachma to discover truths that are in operation in the physical universe and in the world of ideas, but not as a substitute for your intuitive knowledge that you exist as part of God, but as to enhance it, to strengthen it, to clarify it, to be real through our intelligence, through proofs that we discover in all areas of life, so the psychological truths and mathematical truths and biological truths and intellectual. We start discovering that this intuitive reality is borne out in all kinds of ways, but this whole entire phase is originating in the mind, and this is Torah Shebal Peh, all the way through our Rishonim, Rambam, right, and all the other Rishonim that are very focused on using your mind to understand everything, understand the world of God. But it really builds on the intuitive knowledge. Okay? That is when Hashem is speaking through Chachma. This type of speech, when there's no more Nevuah, is called Ruach. Ruach HaKodesh. Okay? And you'll already begin to realize that there are 3 levels: Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama. The first phase is Neshama, right? When you just know. You breathe it in. Now, what Kaylee in the Beis HaMikdash is that? The Ketores, okay? You have a Neshama, which Hashem breathes through the nose. All right, think about Purim. Who's associated with the Ketores, with the incense? Mordechai. Why? It's in here. Why? Marjoram. It's one of the spices in the Ketores. What's Esther's real name? Hadassah, okay? Ketores. Vayipach ba'apo nishmas chaim Hashem blu. That's intuitive knowledge that we're connected to Hashem. Okay? That's the Mizbeach HaZahav. All right? But the next phase, which is Chachma, that's associated with Greece. What, Kaylee, are we talking about? The menorah, the lights, Torah R, right? That's our second phase. This is a merging sense of a separate self, and we begin to identify ourselves and understand ourselves through abstract ideas, philosophy, logic, Torah Sheba'al Peh. What is the distortion of this? The distortion of this, as we spoke about, is that the Greeks wanted the Jewish people to do as they did. They said, look, we're moving into a place of logic and discovery and chachma. So we are too. He said, yes, but all that nonsense about God controlling everything, we can't operate with that anymore. That's mythology, it's fantasy, it's superstition, it's holding us back. And we said, that's true for you, but it's not true for us. So we're going to still hold on to all that from our first phase and let it inform our second phase. And the Greeks said, no, that's foolish thinking. None of that. That was all childish. That was all fantasy. So the distortion of our Torah Sheba'al Peh is the idea that that previous phase wasn't real. Now, the Greeks, as we talked about this, gave us a lot of ideas and a lot of truths. And Rambam is always comparing, are they real? Or are they, how much are they connected to what's real? And how much are they diverting from what's real? Okay? That's how we analyze Chachma. Chachma b'gayim tamin. There's no question they will discover real Chachma. But Torah b'gayim al tamin. But not Torah. And if it's not connected to Torah, now, it's not ultimately true. Now, here's the thing, Rav Moshe explains. It wasn't just another way of Hashem speaking. Now Hashem is speaking through Ruach HaKodesh, and we have to, we have to find it that way. Rav Moshe says, based on the idea of the Septuagint, our sight, we changed. That is the way we discover Hashem. It's not like they're doing it, and we have to, adapt to it. It's the new way that the entire world is operating. We're going into adulthood. So we have to find Hashem through Torah Sheba'al Peh, okay? And this is where all kinds of interesting ideas come from. Like, well, there's a machlokas on a halacha. What does Hashem really want? What would a Navi say? So it doesn't even matter what a Navi would say. Because now, Chacham adif mi Navi, Chacham is preferred to a Navi. We never paskin in the time of Torah Sheba'al Peh based on Nevuah. We completely discredit it. It's not how we discover the truth at all. Torah lo b'shamayim. We discover it through our Chachma. Okay, through Ruach HaKodesh. Now, here's where Hanukkah comes in. Hanukkah reminds us, remember this, with the miracle of the shemen that burned. But you're out there, you're putting your life on the line, you're fighting for your truths in this new world, but I'm always still here. It's still, I'm behind the scenes. I'm really helping you fight. You're still part of my existence. Nothing's changed. Remember that idea? Okay, next. This is fundamental now, because now we're going into phase 3, which is our phase. This is Rome. There were 4 exiles. Paras u'Madai, which kind of go together, and we're not distinguishing them right now, but they're essentially the Avodah Zarah Nevuah challenge, okay? Second, Greece, the philosophy challenge. What's Golus Romi? Where are we now? Rome is Esav. Rome is Amalek, and Amalek is Esav in the distilled worst version. Okay, what does the name Esav even mean? To do. Asiya, doing, made, fully made, done. Okay. What happens between Greece and Rome? What happens now? Where are we? Because if we don't know where we are, we don't know how to teach the next generation. We don't know in what way Torah needs to be transmitted if we don't know where we are in history. And it's not that it's an unfortunate thing. It is a fact. Our minds have changed. Our operation has changed. Our sense of self has changed. And therefore, the way we transmit Torah must change, or adapt, I would say. So it is not the age of philosophy anymore. Greek metaphysics has given way. These mathematical formula have given way, these ideas about the world and physics, and has given way to engineering. What do I do with these ideas? I build cell phones with them. I build cars with them. I build electronic cars. How do I take these ideas and apply them to the physical world and make endless amounts of things that nobody could have even comprehended or conceived of Look at everything that is being built and developed. Endless human creativity devoted to extracting from the physical world through knowledge things that make our life more pleasurable and give us more power and make us more secure. We are identifying now not with ideas that define us, but things that we use to exist on all levels. Things. It is the time of material, physical things. It's not just that materialism is, so rampant. It's we identify ourselves by the physical world. How we look, what we have, what things do for us, how long we live. This is how we know ourselves. Originally, we knew ourselves intuitively to be part of God. Then we came to know ourselves through great ideas. And now the default mode, where we're all at, is we know ourselves, and there's no way to really escape this, through our interaction with the physical world. And it has invaded every space, even in, of course, our religious sphere, because we've changed. We judge things by the physical, what they look like, but also we are looking to the physical for explanations. And we think the physical world, the more we know about it, the more we manipulate it, it will solve all our problems. We'll have pills to solve all your emotional problems. We'll have machines and technology to solve all yours that will get you to live longer through machines and pills. We will satisfy your search. There's only one thing. Let's stop here. All of this, again, if like the Greeks, if it's not built on an intuitive sense of who we are and a discovered sense of who we are, if it exists in a vacuum, it in the end is empty and destructive and miserable. But if it's built upon our sense of self, then what we do with the physical world is what? We look to it now for Hashem to speak not via Nevuah, not via Chachma, or Ruach HaKodesh, but Hashem, the Dibor, is now speaking via the Davar, things. We look around and we say, what is this revealing about Hashem? We have microscopes, we have telescopes, we have all kinds of ways to understand the physical world, and it reveals Hashem. History, human nature, psychology, math and physics, every area is revealing this ultimate truth that we knew intuitively. And then we discovered through logic, and now we're seeing it expressed in everything. That's this phase. There are two ways to relate to this new Roman, Esav, Asiya, material world. One, if it's disconnected from our identity.
Yadayim Yadei Esav, Rabbi.
Yadayim Yadei Esav.
The texting.
Thank you. Thank you, Gitzi. Gitzi's making a wedding on Sunday. There are two ways to relate to the physical world, okay? One is, I'm here, I'm alone, and I only know myself through what I can get my hands on and use to secure my pleasure or my power or my existence, and it becomes a frenzy. Or, there's a whole world out here, and we are getting to know it better and better. We have so many tools to discover it. What is it saying? How is it revealing Hashem? So this is the pros and the cons. If you look in the sheet, oh my goodness, we're only on this. Okay. Hashem revealed through all aspects of our experience. Distortion, Rome is the West, of course. Esav, total identification of self with external material. Now, by the way, which Keli in the Beis HaMikdash is about the physical sustenance? The Shulchan. Okay, now, here we go. We need to know where we are personally and historically in order to teach Torah correctly. It is wrong and a mistake and doesn't work if we teach Torah as if we were still in phase 1 and everybody just intuitively knows they're part of Hashem. That's not what's going on anymore. It's wrong to teach Torah as if everybody is consumed with a philosophical search for meaning and understanding. We have to understand that the way Torah Hashem is speaking today is through the physical world. And all the things we can discover, all the truths we can discover that are hiding right beneath the surface of the physical world. That's how people think today. That's what they're attracted to. That's what gives them excitement. That's how they relate That's what's going on. Now, at the same time, we have to, it's a 3-phase process. You can't just start there. So we have to build some type of basis where the ani is that intuitive knowledge, like a child gets originally. Then we have to enhance it with ideas. And then we have to apply it and show how it's evident in all physical material things. That must be the process. You can't just stay at phase 1 and say, you just have to feel, Amun is automatic, and connection to Hashem is automatic, and everybody, and don't ask philosophical questions, and discredit the whole physical world. No one's there anymore. But it is phase 1, okay? So now we have to just quickly, oh good. I thought it was later, okay. Okay, now, let's talk about Purim. Now let's go back to Purim. Now, does this make sense to everyone? Yes. Thank you, Rabbi Kagan. Okay. Now let's go back to Purim. Purim comes right before the philosophical phase, the discovery phase, and it's a glimpse at the end. At the end, the way we're going to see the truth of all things is, as we are going to discover it now in the Mikdash, in the first phase. The first phase is going to be expressed in the final phase, meaning just like a Mikdash is between the 2 names of Hashem, the whole Nekama and Amalek, that idea is going to be between the 2 names of Hashem, discovered. Meaning, Purim shows us that in the end, through our own interaction in the most physical way without Hashem's name appearing, there's only one truth. Haman is wealthy, and it's about power, and it's about competition, and you see that the physical world and the way things work out, Big Tan and Teresh, all of these things operating in the world with no Hashem not speaking for himself. There's nothing philosophical about the Purim story. It wasn't like Greece where it was a threat of Greek culture against. It was just survival in the physical world, manipulations of parties, right? And wine and power and kings and girls. And through that, the ultimate truth was revealed. That's the end. That's Esav. Okay? Now, Esav comes through the distilled version of Esav is Amalek. What is Amalek? We know Amalek by one identifying factor. They hate the bris we have with Hashem. If you look at Parshas Amalek, Parshas Zachar, okay? You know that, Parshas Zachar. We are, it says here, look at Pasuk 18, Asher karcha baderech, zeicher zachar es asher salacha Amalek, baderech b'tzeischa miMitzrayim. Remember what they did to you? Asher karcha baderech, they happened upon you, surprised you. Now look, vayizanev b'cha kol hanecha shalim acharecha. They attacked your weak ones that were like straggling behind. This means, if you look in the bottom, Tanchuma 10 Parshas Kitzese, this is the underlying meaning here is whoever they were able to attack, to conquer, one of the ways they tortured them or they showed their superiority is they mutilated them. It's hidden in the words Vayisanev b'zane b'cha. They grabbed your tail, the zon of those that were straggling. But also there's another implication here. It says they cut off their bris milah and they threw it up to God and they said, here's your bris. So cutting off the area of the bris milah, you see that? As an act of defiance. What do we mean by that? They cut off the bris. We know when we make a bris, it's always called kores bris. Remember the bris ben Absarim with Avraham? He cut the animals in half. Why do we talk about kores together with bris? First of all, there's Rav Moshe, of course. Bris is from the word bria, creation. A bris between us and Hashem is what bris of Har Sinai. What is a bris? A bris means that we both understand and accept that we're part of one whole. It's not a contract where you have your needs, I have my needs. We'll work together, but it's really we're both in it for our own purposes. I'm going to sell you potatoes. You're going to give me money. As soon as I put the potatoes in the UPS box and give it to UPS, if UPS loses it, I don't really care. I have your money. I did my job. It's not about you. It's about me. And each person has their own interest in mind. A bris is a completely different thing. We're both part of the one whole. This is our theme. Kores means a person, in a sense, cuts themselves in half, say, I am only half, with that, outside of this bris. In the bris, I am whole because I'm half of a totality. Hashem is a half. We are the other half here. Hashem is speaking ultimately through us, through our ideas, ultimately through His world, and we put this all together, and we, with our own individuality, find all new ways of bringing this out, of expressing this. So this is why we are co-race bris. We are in a bris with Hashem. Amalek represents the antithesis of the Jewish people. You know, there's the Jews and the ultimate arch enemy, Amalek. Okay? And until Amalek is neutralized, Hashem's throne, ki yad al keska, can never be complete, meaning our appreciation of Hashem will never be complete as long as there's this agenda, there's this message, which is this mockery of the bris, which means you really think you're in some sort of relationship with Hashem? You think this is what's going on? This is fantasy, this is superstition, this is like from the past. Give it up. That's Amalek. Amalek comes in right at the end of the first period to remind us that there will always be threats which are telling us that experience, that intuitive knowledge that we have, it's not true. It doesn't exist. That's why Amalek comes right after we get out of Mitzrayim. They mock the bris. They come right before the tkufa of philosophy, of Torah Shebaal Peh, of discovery. They come right before the tkufa of this sense of separation from and discovering of Hashem, not intuitively, but as we said, through understanding. They're saying that whole, intuitive knowledge you have, this sense that you have a bris, it doesn't exist. That's the essence. All that exists is this world and what you can see. And all philosophy today is just devoted to, in a sense, legitimizing that idea. To the extent that they're even telling us we don't have a soul, there's no such thing anymore. But people are not buying it. People are not buying it because when they indulge in the physical world just in and of itself, it does not feed the essential, hunger of a person, and they know there's something more, and then we start going backwards. Okay, now let's go to the Mishkan. 3 types of dibur: dibur through nevuah, dibur through chachma, dibur through davar, through things. Alrighty? The golden mizbeach, we already did this. It's made out of wood and gold. Okay, I'm not going to talk about that right now. It's ketores, smell, neshama, neshima, we just mentioned that. V'yipach ba'apu nishmas chaim, Esther, Hadassah. Okay? Esther min haTorah minayin. Where is Esther hidden to in the Torah? I'm going to hide. Hiding is the last phase. Hiding is teva. It's behind the curtain. It's behind the physical, the veil. This is the time of Hester Panim. Where's Mordechai in the Torah? Mor drawer, right? Maria Dachi. Haman goes back to Eitz Hadas. You can already figure that whole thing out. Hamin ha'etz. You know what the Eitz Hadas is. The Eitz Hadas, which gave birth to Haman, Hamin, it's the same idea. It's the idea that I'm only relating to things as I see them. There's no, and into this and to this end, Chachma is hijacked. Chachma is hijacked to provide for me rationalizations of what I see and what I want in the physical world is good for me. It's not real Chachma. Real Chachma is objective. It's not self-serving. Real Chachma is what the Greeks and what we in Torah Shebaal Peh really, really tried to achieve. Real, objective Chachma. Disinterested, meaning not uninterested. Disinterested, not just because it's good for me. That there's no place for that in the Eitz Hadas. It was just how I could use it. But you know that's a whole other thing. That's the golden mizbeach. That is relating to the neshama. That is the intuitive sense that we're part of God's existence, whether it's visible or not. That is Purim. That is Esther and Mordechai. That is that all things in the end are ultimately serving this purpose of proving to us that we are all entirely, so to speak, still in the womb of God. Okay? Number 2, the menorah. That's phase 2. That's Hanukkah, obviously. The symbolism of the menorah is, right, it's Ruach HaKodesh, wisdom. We kindle it daily, but the Ner Maravi never goes out. It's always with us. Now, it's entirely gold. We're going to understand that in a minute. This is Hanukkah. This is discovery and sacrifice for eternal truths. Now, this is the main idea. Chachma is built on already existing core knowledge. Reishis Chachma, Yiras Hashem. There's one trunk to the menorah. That is the Ani. That's the essence. That's the first type of knowledge. And 6 branches all facing, their light all facing the center. the one central piece, and the 6, 6 is very, number, 6 days of the week. Here, Vayan Vayomer Eli Lamor Zedvar Hashem El Zerubbabel Lamor Lo B'chayil V'lo B'koch. This is the Hanukkah reference, not by power and might. Ki im Baruchi, with my ruach. This is Hanukkah. This is my spirit. This is symbolized by the menorah. We're going to see a little bit more about that in a minute. And then the shulchan. That is food, that is material life, that is what we relate to now. It's fresh all week. In other words, it sustains us all week. It's always fresh. There's always new nourishment in it. There's always more to discover. A little bit satisfies. That was the bracha b'isa. They had a little bit, the kohanim, and they were full. Meaning moderation, meaning we're not looking to the physical world to fill us, to give us meaning. We're imposing our meaning upon it, which changes everything. Our relationship, and especially with food. If a person is trying to eat to fill their needs, their emotional needs, they can eat the entire seasons and the store, and it's not going to be enough. But if a person knows who they are, and food is just the way it's supposed to be, it's an expression, an opportunity to appreciate our physical existence in this world, it's moderation. Now, I want you... Oh, is Rav Hirsch in here?
No.
Oh, no.
It's on Google or done.
Here's Rav Hirsch. Oh, okay, so you can stop in the office and we'll get them. So those who have it, I'll read to you, okay? This is amazing stuff from Rav Hirsch. Rav Hirsch has pages and pages and pages on the Kelim and the Mishkan. It sounds very philosophical. It's like my father calls it, chocolate-covered Kabbalah. Okay, and my father pointed this out to me today, and spoke a lot about the menorah. Also, my father's also, by the way, many ideas. I've heard from my home, from my father. I don't even identify them with hearing them from my father because they're so natural, and they weren't like chidushim that I discovered from somebody new that I was able to suddenly, draw from, like Zechron Levracha, my father-in-law, or Moshe Shapiro. This was always there. So the truth is, there's a great debt of gratitude to my father. He happens to also be on Torah anytime. Rabbi Yosef Chaim Schwab, he is a great personality. You met him, I think. And he pointed this out. Let me read you what Rav Hirsch says. The shulchan, made primarily of wood, represents a process, again, or think about the material, where we are now, represents a process of continuous development. Only its shape and its accessories, its limits and supports, give it stability and endurance. The table thus represents the material aspect of life, which by its very nature is subject to changes and transformations, germination and growth, blossoming and ripening, and eventually death and decay. Only in Hashem's sanctuary, within the confines of truth, right? Through the spirit and order of Hashem's Torah does this aspect attain set limits, strength, and endurance in a place of eternity. This is essentially saying that the material within the confines, the framework of the Mishkan, meaning our true ideas, the right way of living, our limits, does it have in all its phases the capacity to sustain us. By contrast, the menorah is made entirely of gold. Thus, by its very substance, it symbolizes constancy and timelessness, which is implied by the form of the menorah, are to blossom and unfold in Hashem's sanctuary through the spirit of Hashem's Torah. And in man, the only firm, immutable, and eternal element is the divine element within him, of which he becomes aware through the perception of truth and his will to do good. This is what we're talking about, the journey, from phase 1 to phase 2, phase 3. This perception and this will in man, as well as the objects, the material world of his perception and will, truth and goodness, are in themselves eternal and immutable, not subject to gradation or alteration. Although the divine element in the mature man appears infinitely richer than the divine element that was latent in him as a child, nevertheless, the divine element latent in the child is no less pure and divine than that which reaches full development in the mature man. I'm skipping a little bit. In the developmental process of the physical world, higher forms grow at the expense of lower forms, which the Greeks and the Romans believed prior was lower. Lower forms die off so that higher, more developed forms may emerge. Now, not so the things, I'm skipping a little bit, not so the things of the Spirit. Goodness and truth never lose any of their validity or justification. Whatever is good and true remains so forever. Each higher level of truth and goodness is not the negation of the preceding level, but its realization. I'm skipping a little bit. The most complex system of sublime, momentous truths cannot dispense with the simple elementary truths that served as its starting point. It is precisely the firm endurance of those simple, immovable truths that is the root and foundation of the whole existence of the higher, more advanced truths. These higher forms of truth are essentially nothing but the substance, now spelled out and clarified, of those simple fundamental truths. Substance that was still undeveloped and veiled from the conscious mind. He's literally talking about the transition from the intuitive ani as part of Hashem to the spelled out, clarified, philosophical, understood truths, to the application and allowance of the physical world to reveal all these truths. One most important understanding of this, which is, first of all, Moshe Shapiro always used to speak about the idea that when we learn, are we truly a tabula rasa? Just remember that whole idea, an empty slate? The answer is absolutely not. We are not an empty slate when we learn, because who is the I that is processing and understanding what I'm learning? Who's relating to the ideas that I'm learning? That original ani, which is part of the anochi, is our first sense of self, and all additional knowledge is added to it and defines it and clarifies it. In today's phase of history, where we are in Rome, Esav, material, the Shulchan, okay? When a person's sense of self is as number one, we start with, this is what we, understand, this is how we operate, a separate self. This intense determination and focus on individuality and the freedom of everybody to discover their own, themselves and find themselves and to discover it as a separate entity. That's where we are. If we are trying to be mechanech the next generation in true Torah, it starts with allowing for each person to truly express and understand themselves as a separate individual who is unique. Because as we go through history, the location of the I was first part of God, then it was part of the great truths, and now it's just a separate entity on its own. There's this separation, so to speak. But the separation comes ultimately, the goal of it is that we take this search for the ani, which first is going to be, we're looking in the physical world. Then we're going to draw it back and encourage everyone to feel there and to discover and also to feel their ani as which is deep buried in there. It's still in there, intuitively as belonging to something. But we must allow for the fact that every individual is a separate entity, physically and then psychologically and emotionally, intellectually different from everybody else. And Hashem is speaking not just through everything in the material world, which now we are identifying. Everything is specialized today. So to humanity, each person is like a specialty, a different version of God's expression in this world, and each person has what to say, and Hashem is speaking through each and every individual person, and each person deserves and requires the courtesy of being taken seriously as a separate entity who's not like everybody else and whose identity is not taken for granted, as you just, Amunah, you're part of God, you know it, you understand it. It's just assumed. It's not assumed. Every single person today feels individual. This is the natural progression. And expresses their individuality or wants to. And relates to everything their way. This is the world we're in. And is lurking for expression and I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? No, not validation. It's more than expression, but to develop themselves, I guess, to exist in a way that is truly relatable, to their inner sense. Meaning like this, just like Avraham, this Rabbi Kagan points out, and we'll end with this idea. He discovered Hashem, okay, ultimately through, he went backwards. Avraham went backwards, which is where we're at. First, Avraham looked at the physical world and said, whoa, what is this world all about? Remember that? And then Avraham discovered a great idea that we're all part of God's existence. He came to that concept. He came to that later in life, the idea of Hashgacha, Hashem's interplay with us. He came to that later. And we talked about this in the previous year. And then at 75, Hashem said to him, Lech lecha, go into yourself. You're going to discover that it's in you. You know it already. He went backwards. We are all in that. That's where we're at now. We start with this natural understanding that people are very identified with the physical. And instead of saying, how can I use it, we encourage them, we shepherd them to say, what is it revealing? And then it's revealing idea. The physical world is revealing things. Well, there are also great ideas that help us understand that. And then you get to a point where you come to the conclusion that that all these things you're discovering, you already kind of know them. You already feel them. You've been asking those questions all along. What am I part of? What's my purpose? What's really going on here? This is where we're at. And chinuch has to fit the reality of the times. So, but again, the main idea being that Purim is telling us how it's going to look now, at the end. How it's all going to come through the physical. No great philosophies, no great miracles, just through the way the physical world plays itself out. All right, everybody. Have a wonderful week.